In this video, we are going to look at some ways you can hone, refine, and continue to develop your resume as you prepare for the job fair coming up. The first thing I want to encourage you to do is take advantage of this QR code. The QR code you're going to see in the corner of every slide in this presentation, and that will link you to our resume guide that's going to go through everything we talk about here today and more. Because again, we're really just looking at honing and refining our resume here. We're not going to cover everything from A to Z in terms of resume creation. But that resume guide is much, much more detailed. So I would encourage you to download that, keep that with you, and take advantage of it. We're going to talk about three different things here. We're going to talk about the purpose of the resume first, which can be really helpful in approaching how we approach our resume, how we tackle certain elements of it. Then we're going to actually look at a sample resume and kind of go through some of the components and parts of a resume and how you can tweak those to fit your own needs and your own skill set, your own pieces of experience. And then we'll end by talking a little bit about applicant tracking systems and how those can factor into why we want to create our resume the way we do. So those are the three things we're going to do. And we'll start off by talking about the purpose of the resume. Well, ultimately, in a lot of situations, the purpose of the resume is to help us get an interview, and it is our presence on paper. The resume is your presence on paper. And so because it's your presence on paper, it is not a one-off, one-time, one-size-fits-all document. It is an evolving document. And in fact, a lot of you are probably going to want to have several different versions of your resume that you will submit to different employers, specifically when you are submitting online. For the job fair that you're attending, you're just going to have one version of your resume that you hand out. You probably don't want to be juggling multiple versions of your resume. But just know that over time, as your career develops, you probably will have multiple versions of your resume, and you'll submit different versions of that resume to different employers. So it's there to represent you on paper. It's there to help you get an interview. For that reason, it's a really, really important document. It's something that can really help you land that interview. But resumes do not get you jobs. They get you interviews, okay? So keep that in mind as we discuss all of this. As we look at this sample resume, you'll find this sample resume in our resume guide. Really take a look at it. It's a good example of what a resume can look like. And writing a resume is an art, not a science. There is no one correct way to write your resume. But there are some general best practices and standards that we at the University Career Center recommend. And we're going to talk about some of those. The first thing is that there should be a consistent format and font to your resume. A consistent professional format to your font, to your resume, okay? A lot of that comes down to the something as simple as the margins you use. So we recommend 1 inch to 0.7 inch margins so that the page doesn't look incredibly cramped. You don't want text to be crammed wall to wall, and at the same time, you don't want so much white space that it's impossible to fit everything on one page. So 1 inch to 0.7 margins is a good rule of thumb. Also, as far as the fonts you use, you usually want to use between 10 and 12 point font. That can, of course, vary from the specific font you're using to a different font. But 10 to 12 point font is a good rule of thumb, and you don't have to use Times New Roman. It just needs to be a professional looking font. So a lot of folks like to use serif or sans serif. Times New Roman is still very popular, but make sure that it's something that looks professional, that is easy to read both on a computer screen and on the printed page, because that can make a big difference there. So have a consistent font, have consistent margins, and that's going to make your document look very visually appealing. So if you look at this sample document, another thing you notice is that all of the font is black. It's all black text, okay? And that's really important for another reason that we'll talk about when we start to get to applicant tracking systems. But keep everything black and white, and keep everything free of tables, pictures, charts, graphs, all of those kinds of things that may seem like they make our document more visually appealing. But more on that in just a few minutes. The first thing you'll notice if you look at this sample resume is that you've got the header up here that has all of this individual's contact information. So we have Janet Student's name up there. It's in bold and it's a little bit bigger. So when I say 10 to 12 point font, our name might break that rule, right? Maybe we go 14, 15, 16 point font for our name because we want our name to really pop. We want that to be the first thing that they see. And then under that, we have our contact information. It's really important that your contact information is right up there at the top, that it's accessible, that it is easy to read. And so you want to make sure you have the city you live in, and it could just be the city and state. Do not put your actual residential address on there for privacy reasons. But city and state, your phone number, and then your email address. Your email address needs to be on there as well. And it's not a bad idea to use a professional non-Texas Tech affiliated email so that you will have those, you will be able to keep those emails and have access to your correspondence with those employers forever, even after you leave Texas Tech. So make sure you have your contact info up there. A lot of people like to put their LinkedIn, if they have a LinkedIn as well, on the contact info line. But make sure it's there, make sure it's all easy to read. After that, the first section you're going to put on your resume almost certainly is going to be education, okay? Education. And notice the way that education is formatted because it's going to kind of provide the template for everything else in your resume. You have the name of the institution first, the location of the institution, so Texas Tech University, Lubbock, Texas, and then you have your degree under that, and you're going to spell it out. Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, or Bachelor of Science in whatever it may be. If you've not graduated yet, you're going to put expected graduation date on there, just like you see in the example there. But that sample of how you write things down for education is going to kind of dictate how you fill everything else out on the resume. So if we go down to the next section of the resume, it's experience, you'll notice that you have something similar. You have the organization, the institution first, so Chancellor's Ambassadors or African Student Organization, TTU Office of Community and Multicultural Affairs. You have the organization first, followed by the location, and then you have the job title or the position you held within that organization. And notice the way the font is used to draw attention to certain things. So all of our job titles are, all of our organizations are in bold. It draws attention to them. So the eye, when they're reading the resume, the eye is drawn to those particular job titles at a glance. The job titles that we have are in italics under there. President, Community Services Committee Chair, right? And those italics, again, it's just another way to make it for the eyes to make a distinction when they're reading the resume. Also notice how clear our section headers are. So we have education, experience, other work experience, volunteer service, and they are in bold and they're in all caps. That's not a bad idea. Sometimes folks will draw a line under them instead of putting them in all caps. But there should be something that distinguishes each section as of the resume as a particular section header. Okay? That way, again, it's easy to read at a glance. That's the name of the game, is you want your employer to be able to spend 10 or 15 seconds with your resume and be able to find everything incredibly easily in an incredibly accessible way. So that's it. It is all about readability. Now, we're not going to talk about these bullet points that you see here for the sake of time, but if you look in your resume guide, you're going to find some really good tips and really good strategies for creating strong bullet points, because that's how you sell the experience that you have, is through creating very, very strong bullet points. So I would encourage you, as you're looking over your resume and you're honing it, getting it ready for the job fair, review those bullet points and see if there's anything you can do to make them stronger. Okay? Check those bullet points, get them really strong. And then again, include sections that are relevant for you. So sometimes if you don't have industry work experience, you just label the section experience, and that's where you're able to put clubs that you're a part of. You're able to put class projects because it's not specific to things you worked and you were paid for. So really hone and refine those sections according to your own individual needs. I want to finish things up by talking a little bit about applicant tracking systems. Now, none of this applies if you hand your resume directly to a recruiter at a fair. But if you submit a resume online through a database, it is most likely being screened by an applicant tracking system, which is a software that essentially pre-screens your resume and tries to find keywords, phrases, and pieces of experience that match up with the job description that the employers have input into that database. And so when I talked earlier about it being really important that you have all black font, that you spell everything out, that you don't have pictures in there, it's so that you don't confuse the applicant tracking system. Because applicant tracking systems can be really finicky, and if they see something they don't recognize, they can just translate all of that into gibberish, and it can result in your resume being thrown out. So that's why it's really important to proofread and make sure your resume is airtight in terms of being error-free and really legible, and not having any sort of funky or strange or off-the-wall kind of formatting there. That's why we have such a standard format. That's why the resume looks the way it does in the sample that we have given you. These are just a few tips that will hopefully help you figure out how to hone and refine the resume. Again, you are always welcome and encouraged, in fact, to book a resume appointment with us at the Career Center. You can book through the Rater Success Hub, or you can call the number that's listed on this slide, and we're happy to go through your resume with you, and really help you get it to where you want it to be. So your work on your resume doesn't have to end here. Use your resume guide, use us at the University Career Center, and we wish you the best of luck in delivering those resumes to employers at the job fair. Thank you.